What's up, guys? Benyam Kidane here from NBA Australia. And with The Last Dance gracing our TV screens, we're here to break down episodes 5 and 6. And we're joined by a very special guest, a man who has graced our screens for many years, Dan Ewing. How you doing, man?
BK, what's up, baby? Long time no see.
Good to see you again, my man. How you holding up during this isolation and quarantine period?
Mate, I'm good. I'm good. If I could reach through the quarantine camera and kiss you, I would. But that's another story. But I'm good, mate. Honestly, apart from missing hoops, of course, I read a health article at the start of this whole thing, and it said most people will either lose 10 kilos or put on 10 kilos, with the bottle shops and supermarkets and whatever. And I'd already put on the 10, right? So I didn't need to get it up to 20. So I'm already down about sort of 7 kilos in the last few weeks just from going on walks, eating properly, and obviously a little less red wine. But it's been pretty good for me, mate. So big shout out to the people out there who are suffering a bit though. But it seems like it's getting better.
Absolutely, man. Good to hear. Good to hear. And the one saving grace we do have during this period is The Last Dance. We've got 10 hours of glorious Chicago Bulls footage from the 90s. We're just over the halfway mark now of the documentary. Episodes 5 and 6 dropped on Netflix last night. What was, I guess, your big takeaway from the episodes last night?
Well, first of all, I mean, let's let a big how do you say when you first see the image of Kobe and Michael standing next together, and our condolences must go out to not only the Bryant family but obviously everyone who perished in that crash. But I mean, you saw there's all these videos on YouTube of how Kobe's moves mirror Michael's. I'm sure like a lot of the fans at home and yourself, they're like mirror image. It's almost like a video game. And just the comment that really stuck in my mind was that when people are talking to Kobe about this turnaround jump shot, and Kobe said, "I got that from him." How often do you hear Kobe Bryant saying that he got something from someone else, right? There's only one guy he would pretty much he would say that about, and that's MJ.
Yeah.
And obviously the physical similarities are freakishly similar. I mean, Jordan and LeBron are two completely different body types. Michael and Kobe, so it was kind of, it's bittersweet, when you saw Kobe come up. I'm sure you felt the same way.
Yeah, 100%. Once those opening credits kind of came up and, it was in dedication to Kobe and just seeing, those shots, not necessarily in the game, but just seeing them interact, in the tunnel around the arena. And then obviously, a 10-year-old starting the All-Star game and wanting to go straight at Jordan and just kind of seeing that bond. And, we saw MJ spoke about their relationship at Kobe's memorial. It wasn't something that a lot of people necessarily knew the depths of, but just kind of seeing that kind of vision and piecing it all together. It's pretty cool to just see just how much of, I mean, we knew how much of an influence MJ was, but to see how much of a friend he was and a mentor to Kobe was pretty cool.
Yeah. And I like the locker room banter, and this is the insight this doco has been giving us. Just like this in there, and talking smack or talking the proverbial, with Bird, Magic, and Jordan in that locker room. Like that's the stuff that, like, because I'm 35 and obviously grew up in the Jordan era, on the younger side, obviously, but just that's the sort of stuff you go, that's so cool. I love that insight, and they're all just there, and they're so ultra competitive with each other, but they're mates, and I love that insight.
Yeah, for sure. It's that level of respect. Obviously, they've been at each other in different finals over the year, but just seeing them not be necessarily NBA stars, just seeing them being dudes hanging out in the locker room and chopping it up, and
not joking around.
As always, Magic is always a scene stealer with his storytellings.
It's so good, mate. So good.
And I mean, further along from that, seeing Jordan in the locker room, almost talking about Kobe being the next guy and being the next one to sort of take over from him, but he wasn't giving him an inch in that game.
No, well, I like it. It's so, as Jordan said at that beautiful ceremony for Kobe, it was like a younger brother. And I'm telling you now, man, I've never competed harder against anyone than my younger brother. And he and I would kick each other's ass. It would be into the brick walls, be into the driveways, would be coming in with bumps and bruises. Like someone would come running in. He's cheating. He's doing this. We'd like, it's like, so when you think of it in that sense, and more to what we were saying before with these guys are all great friends. Patrick Ewing and Larry and Michael, and these guys are great friends, but they were ultra competitors, you know. And the thing, I was listening to another interview with Kobe, and it was quite fascinating because you see guys like LeBron and some of the other guys in this day and age, they're super competitive. Of course, they want to win and all that sort of stuff. Guys like Kobe and MJ, right? I was leaning into Magic, especially with the practice game that we can talk about later for the '92 Olympics. But they decide to win. There's no we're trying to win. There's no we should win. There's no we want to win. These guys decide to win, and losing drove them absolutely effing crazy. You know, that it was just that. So I think there's Jordan, Kobe, and then there's kind of that group of everyone else. Larry's pretty competitive, and obviously MJ, but there's that dog that they decided to win. That to me was so fascinating.
100%. You know, when you talk about all the other great competitors, you know, everybody wants to win, but it almost felt like Jordan needed to win, you know, like he just couldn't live without winning in those situations. And to your point, I think it was BJ Armstrong said, you know, MJ got to a point where he wasn't necessarily playing basketball, but he was there to win games. He would let everyone else play, but he knew his job, and that was when it was over. And just kind of hearing that from his teammates, it's you know, there's levels to this kind of thing. But you know, a great opening, obviously, with Kobe, and you know, it's one of those things. Now you kind of look back on, and it just kind of brings everything, you know, really full circle, getting all that information. But I think for me, the part of the documentary that I enjoyed the most was seeing the story behind not only Air Jordan 1, but just him going to Nike, how that all unfolded. And, you know, his mum might be the most important person in Nike history for making him go to that meeting.
I was just about to say that. I mean, he was an Adidas or an Adidas fan, tomato. He wanted to wear Adidas. And the Nike, for me, there was just like, even the mum thing was hilarious. She looks like his sister, by the way. She's aged very well. He's looking after his mum. Good job. But Nike being the upstart company, you know, the upstart company. So we're talking about sort of 35 years ago, 34 years ago. In the scheme of history, it's not it's not a large amount of time, but in sneaker history, isn't it fascinating to Nike? Who's Nike? It's like it's a track shoe, you know, and now everyone's chasing them, you know, and Michael's got a huge part to do with that, and obviously their development team and other athletes. But Michael's mum is probably, like you said, she is the mother of the sneaker game.
They're going to put a statue of her at the front of
incredible.
And also just from, I guess, where MJ sat in terms of Nike, you know, the tennis guys were up here, Arthur Ashe was here, and, you know, the thought of giving him a line seemed crazy. And now when you look back on it, they had that out for, if he doesn't sell $3 million worth of sneakers in the first couple of years, he had 130 mil straight out the gate.
So was that the dollar amount, or was it the actual pairs of shoes? I forgot the.
So I think it was they had to sell $3 million worth of the sneakers, and then that was the kind of all right, we'll continue if we get to that, and then that number goes, you know, the price went up.
My goodness, there's the internet is undefeated, as you know, but the memes of people, you know, the Adidas executives, and it's just like 5 people in clown costumes sitting there, like, you know, if you just type in Adidas executives after this is over, mate. The internet is a fantastic thing, Tom.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, I'm a big sneaker guy. The one is my favorite to this day. What's your go-to Jordan?
I got to say, the retro 11s. Funny story. I'm wearing a Sydney Kings jersey, Harbour City. So obviously our local team here in Australia, in the NBL. There was an import named Corin Henry, and he had 2 pairs of them. I was by no means a great 3-point shooter, but so I bet him that if I beat him in a 1st to 5, he'd have to give me one of the pairs, and he was a size 11. So that's how I got my Jordan Retro 11s. And, you know, this is the time where they weren't constantly, you know, churning out these re-releases. So at the time, I think they were worth about $800. You know, they put it this way, the pairs that he had were in the boxes, you know, so the black and red. So yeah, I've got to go with those. I've worn them a couple of times, but never quite on the floor. I've never had the heart to do it. That's
nice. You got your Jordans in Jordan style, winning them.
That's it. That's it, man. I tell you what, like, I quit while I was ahead. I was never a great 3-point shooter, so I was that was it. Let it go. What about you?
And Clyde Drexler. This was another interesting point in the documentary. Jordan kind of took this personally. There was the comparisons between Clyde, that he was on the come up, and he kind of turned everything into this like siege mentality. Like, all right, well, I got to go and get this guy now. Like he made things personal in a way to kind of just motivate himself. And it didn't really matter who was in his way, whether it was Danny Ainge or if Jerry Krause liked somebody, then I got to get this guy. And when you have a guy like Clyde Drexler, who in his own right is an amazing player, he's one of the best players of all time, but even the thought of someone else being even compared to Jordan on his level, that was enough for him to go out and handle business like that.
Mate, I kind of feel sorry for Clyde. I mean, you could tell with his hairstyle that he was on the way out. It's like the poor guy, and it's just, and you could tell he was defeated. You know what I mean? It's like he ran into Michael Jordan. It's like, is he a bad player for that? No, but yeah, he's another one of those guys with the skill set and the comparison. But I thought it was interesting too, just how like even to this day, when you saw like all the footage of Jordan's interview for the doco, it's like how offended he was at the comparison. It's like, whoa, this guy's still one of the best players in the world. Relax. That's just how he was. It was like, I don't want to be one of the best. I am the best.
Especially considering you're playing against him, same position. Seems natural you'd be compared, but evidently that's not enough to get it done for Mike. In that game as well, the 6 threes in the first half, the shrug, a very, very iconic MJ moment. And it kind of, made you think, when we discuss eras, who could play when, would LeBron be good then, or would MJ be great now? MJ wasn't a 3-point shooter, but when he wanted to, he could light things up like that. And I think that kind of, obviously this is stuff we already know, but for a lot of people, it's a nice little reminder that I think MJ would have been just okay.
I think it would have been fine. And that's one of the comparisons with Kobe and Jordan. This is for me. It's very like they cross paths a little bit, but it's a very different era. Like the physicality that Jordan had to go through. That's the subtle difference I find. You see Jordan's strength was a lot was far greater in my opinion. Could Kobe have got to that? Sure. I have no doubt, but it's just a different time, the physicality back then. That was just like when you watch these things, and not everyone has to be the bad boys or the Jordan rules or anything like that, but just the overall physicality of the league back then. That's what for me, apart from the accolades, puts Jordan in that different stratosphere.
Yeah, I mean,
is that what he had, the punishment, and Isiah had to go through it too, and people can have their opinions about him, but just the punishment players went through physically back then. This is before hyperbaric chambers and that stuff that looks like it's out of Star Wars. Just what the players had to go through back then. That's what sets them apart.
Yeah, I mean, the bad boy Pistons had MJ in the weight room after a couple of those series. But another part of the doco that I really, really enjoyed was the infamous practice in Monte Carlo, the Dream Team, and everything that kind of surrounds the Dream Team. They've obviously been covered in documentaries in the past, but seeing how that lined up, with Jordan's career and where he was at in terms of coming off a second championship, and that really was the defining point of the era. When he's saying, to Magic, this is the 90s, this is kind of my time now, and seeing him kind of take that step at the Olympics to kind of fuel what we'd see for the next kind of few years, and also just the impact on international basketball. That really kind of was the lightning rod there. We obviously saw him playing against Tony Kukoc and a lot of other great international players in that tournament. But when you think of the Dream Team, you think of the '92 Olympics. I mean, what stands out for you?
I think that you summed it up beautifully. It's so funny. People still call it a practice game. You know what I mean? Of course, and it was a practice game, so they're not wrong. But that practice game is maybe the greatest game of basketball ever played, not in front of a crowd or not televised. Just think of the talent. And because people forget Magic Johnson was a competitive dog as well. Maybe not to Jordan's level, but to hear Magic speaking that way and talking that much crap, it was fantastic. You know what I mean? And it was just like the shuffling of the cards. It was really like who's the alpha in this NBA landscape. And like you said, it changed the landscape of the game forever. But that was fantastic. And a little side takeaway that I thought was fascinating was the uniform when they were stepping up for the gold medal. Because people see it now, right? When Nike didn't have, so when Nike has the NBA contract, the little swoosh on the uniform, James Harden will bit of black tape, or he'll do something, you know what I mean? Or he'll scrunch his jersey or tape his something, you know. And to see how cleverly Michael navigated the Reebok sign with the American flag, because what do you do, you know? And the bit on, I think he was on the phone telling someone that what he was like, they're not going to be able to do anything about how I'm going to cover it up. Because what do you do? It's the American flag. And then I thought it was really interesting the almost disdain that Scottie Pippen had for Tony Kukoc. Not to be cheesy, but it was quite very much the old Bulls, young Bull thing, you know. And obviously Scottie Pippen's disdain for Jerry Krause and the contract he was on, and being 122nd on the pay grade, it was really sending a message. Here's this European guy that you're very high on, that you love, that you can't wait to get here. I'm going to go in there and crush him, right? It's not nothing that Tony Kukoc has done wrong. But it's just fascinating to see these guys who are, because Scotty's quite jovial normally, but to see him take out all his frustration on the Bulls front office on this poor kid from Croatia, I thought that was but just because I didn't know all that. Like, I didn't know they had this sort of, you know, it's so all that insight is just, it's so great to watch.
You know, if someone's going to get paid on the Bulls, it's me, you know, and you know, Jerry Krause kind of prioritized that deal for Kukoc before looking after Pippen. And, you know, poor Tony Kukoc, because that first game, you know, he was shook.
But I mean, if you look at it, he played much better in the second game. He's a kid. He was a kid playing against the best team ever assembled, you know, and to hold his own. And I think in the gold medal game, he's like 16 and 6 or something along those lines, you know, and good on him, you know. And then you know, he's earned his respect, and he goes over there and has a storied career with the Bulls after that. But I thought it was fascinating, that interview with Scotty. I want to go back and watch that, because it's just the hatred. He's like, he's not ready to play in the NBA. He's not ready.
Yeah. The candid responses from some of the guys were pretty hilarious.
That was great.
And that kind of just goes to show you the mentality of not only, you know, Pip and MJ, but just the mentality of that team, you know, because this was the first time NBA guys were going, you know, to the Olympics. And it was crazy. Like, we look at it now, what international basketball is now, but from where this kind of started with the dream team, you know, and even David Stern pointed to that, in that, you know, this is where the game kind of exploded, and you know, we really have the dream team to kind of thank for that.
It laid the foundations. I mean, you see now, I was lucky a few years back to go to the NBA China games in 2017, and Golden State Warriors versus the Timberwolves, and the Warriors sent everybody. Obviously, it was preseason, so it was limited minutes, but just you see what it does for marketing, and just how big the game is. And obviously, you know, it's all about numbers, and the NBA is a business. But, you know, I didn't really consider when I was over there that those foundations had been laid by, you know, the dream team in '92, because you don't really, until that point, basketball was popular, sure, but when they sent the best players in the world to go and sort of, you know, get a bit of redemption for Team USA basketball, and just what it did, and just it's not just Jordan, but it was sort of Bird and Malone. It's the best players on the planet over there playing the Olympics. It's just in Monte Carlo. It's just, mate. It's fantastic.
Yeah, at an Olympic Games, when you have the best of every sport, the dream team was the best of them. They were the biggest rock stars there. Like, they were just different.
Oh, mate, incredible. And so, speaking of rock stars, I thought it was really fascinating to see, because we obviously, as basketball and hoops junkies, we, you know, like on the Mount Rushmore of basketball, there's Jordan, and then there's the rest for me. You know, we figure it out, then you can sort of debate. But just to see him in that hotel room, and it's a bit confusing, the timeline, but that was 98, that was shot. It's like you talk about like Bieber, the Beatles, you know, AC/DC, whoever, Madonna, Michael Jackson. There you go, is a great example. It's just it was almost sad to see. He was just enjoying sitting on his couch cigar in hand, just eating a meal, and just to be quiet, because he was bombarded. It's like, it's the second he's out of that elevator, bombarded on the way to the bus, gets out of the bus, bombarded again, media, fans, then he has to perform, and then it all starts again. Then it's an hour after, and he was always quite, what I found quite personable with me, and giving him his time. A lot of people will say he's a bit more sort of abrasive and not quite overly friendly, but it's a different time now. But yeah, I just thought it was fascinating to that level of just rock star, and how many you can understand why he needed that break.
Oh, 100%. And I think it was one of the guys from the Bulls front office, the quote was, "I wouldn't want to be like Mike. It's an impossible task." And to your point, it's every day he wakes up and he's Michael Jordan. We only see the games, the Gatorade commercials, and life looks great. But, after that first three-peat, Mike was fried. And we always talk about, if he didn't retire and go to baseball, he probably could have won, 8 championships. But watching, I guess, just the way he was mentally and also just physically exhausted after that first three-peat, it kind of just takes you behind the curtain just to show you how hard getting 1 three-peat is, leave alone 2.
Mate, and the scary part is, and this is why I don't think he pops up all that much. A lot of players now, if they've got sort of analyst jobs or they've got other business interests, so they try to keep their brand quite present in the market. Michael Jordan would have the exact same response today. Maybe just like say knock off 15%. But just think about it. He would be mobbed everywhere he went, because he doesn't pop up all that much. He's still the greatest of all time. He would be mobbed no matter where he goes. So you can kind of understand why he doesn't show his face, for want of a better term, all that much anymore. Like, I see that a lot of the guys pop up everywhere. Michael doesn't, because that hysteria would still be there. And I think he's deserved to have a bit of quiet time.
Yeah, we see Michael on his terms, and that's pretty.
Yes.
But I think as well, just watching MJ kind of reminisce and look back, with a cigar in hand and a whiskey, I don't know what he was worried about when he was saying, "I'm not going to come out of this looking too good." I mean, if anything, Mike's a G for the whole way through this. Like,
yeah, I mean, and I can obviously, it needs to be said that I think, so he has the final edit on this and all that sort of stuff anyway, so he shouldn't worry. Top Man Productions or whatever it is, but it's just I would be fascinated to see him in this day and age. I mean, you can always wonder, because you just think in this age of social media and, everyone's got, cameras, like you and I have about 3 or 4 cameras like within a 6 feet radius of ourselves at the moment. It'd just be fascinating to see how people would navigate that. It must be so hard, I can't imagine. And then that level of sort of that rock star level of pressure and anxiety and for a guy as big as he was to only have he had a 2-week sort of media silence, because he just kind of got fed up with, the media scrutiny for his sort of going off and having a night at Atlantic City. Obviously, you can say what you want about the timing, but you can't really fault him all that much as far as his availability to media goes. He had a 2-week thing where he said, "You know what? I'm sick of copping this battering. I've been so good to all you guys. I'm going to have a little 2-week silence."
Yeah, it's not a gambling problem; it's a competition problem, as MJ said. And yeah, the doco kind of backed that up. We saw him with the security guards playing quarters. This man was competing with anybody who would listen, whether it's the golf course, whether it's cards on the back of the plane. This guy just lived and fed off competition. So it's cool to kind of see all those other moments, behind the curtain. And they did an unbelievable job kind of capturing that footage, because it's all still quite raw, even though you have a documentary crew following you around the whole season. You still get those very candid kind of moments that, a lot of us have never seen before. No one's ever seen before. And, you've heard some stories here and there, but just kind of seeing that paint the picture of Mike, you kind of just get a better, full, I guess, understanding of what he really was like at that time.
I love that the security guard with the Tiger King haircut before the Tiger King did it. he's now going to be the meme, the Jordan crying meme.
Yeah.
His security guard, whatever his name is, the blonde, and he
Wow.
was talking smack
That's
to
the new
MJ.
card now.
I love that. He's just like, he's like, yeah, this money's about to get like slid up in my pocket. Da, da, da. I want to know what was that game? Like, I was trying to figure out with my partner, was it a heads or tails thing, or was it they were trying to get the coin into a little square? I couldn't figure it out.
I think it was the closest to the wall, or I'm not 100% sure.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that was.
Because I thought it'd be too simple to have like a like a heads or tails thing, or like heads beats tails or whatever. I thought it might, because it was like kind of weird carpet. They had to get it in something, or closest to the wall sounds about right. But if anyone knows, please inbox us. It's I need to know. And the other interesting thing about sport, I thought it was fascinating. You see them having, they were having beers, like Miller Lights or something after the game. And I think it was Scottie was saying, hey, don't film us having a beer or whatever. And then MJ sort of said, I won't say the word he said, but he said the players 10 years ago would have been drinking beers and smoking cigarettes, and the coaches gave them that. And I just thought that was fascinating, how the landscape of sport and the image that needs to be portrayed and the responsibility athletes must feel, the clubs must feel, because say that was, what are we talking? So that was in sort of 98. I'm not sure when that footage was shot. But so if MJ's saying 10 years ago, and we obviously know what the rugby culture was like, we see our own documentaries and they're smoking at halftime and drinking beers and whatever. Scottie Pippen was concerned about them drinking one sort of light beer after a game. Nowadays, you don't see, unless they've won the championship, you don't see players drinking beers in the locker room. You don't see
a cigar.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So I just think it's fascinating how it's all changed. I mean, one of the NBL teams, the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, is sponsored by, it's like Ikuru water. It's like black water, and they're drinking that after games, which is obviously nutritionally way better than, having a beer or whatever. But I just thought, wow, it's just fascinating how that landscape has changed so much, and the responsibility that athletes have.
And also to credit to Jordan as well, he, as you said, he had that kind of 2 weeks where he was like, all right, I'm not going to talk or whatever. But I mean, before and after that, Jordan was very candid, very honest, even when things weren't going well, you kind of got, whilst he was very protective of his brand and himself and that, when it comes to the game, he just told you what happened, and the access is different now, but just the amount of people wanting that information and the amount of people he's got to speak to every day, it's no wonder the mental kind of drain on top of the physical drain. You could see it in him. He was exhausted, man.
Well, I was saying that before. It's like, I think like sometimes personalities like Jordan's who have decided to win, and you're with that, or you're not, and you don't want to be not with that if you're part of his ball club. But he was also giving him his time, and especially with the media, he was writing to games with certain members of the media. I think once you're there and you're respected and he trusts you, he was so giving him his time, especially to kids, and he fronting up and had cameras and mics in his face nonstop. But yeah, I thought the big takeaway, especially getting to the end of episode 6, was you could tell he was done. It's like in all every championship seemed to have its storyline, and it's fascinating to see the reaction. But I think Phil Jackson said it was almost one of relief. He was just cooked. And obviously he's a couple of years older, but just the difference. Obviously your first championship's always going to be just crazy, but just to see he was done after that series with the Suns. Like and of course you would be, it's like, because it's not just being an athlete and training to win the NBA championship. It's just all this other stuff. It's got to have had to weigh on your mind.
Yeah, and look, Dennis Rodman said that in last week's episode is, I'll play the game for free. It's all the other whatever that you kind of get paid for. But speaking of that Suns series, it was awesome. Just kind of within that story of watching Jordan win that title is, people forget Charles Barkley was a problem, and whatever debate we're having now, when you go back and you relive and relive that moment, Charles Barkley was right there, man. I was happy to kind of see, that was an opportunity for people to really see Charles Barkley at his peak.
And people need to remember, Charles was pretty much alone, right? Charles was alone. Like, it was pretty much him. He kind of said this poignant thing in the interview, was like, Mike outplayed me. It wasn't they outplayed us or whatever. It was pretty much Charles Barkley. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, it was, it was, but obviously it was
They had some role players, Kenny Johnson. And,
but it's like, and he's 6'4" playing power forward. He did his absolute best, but he just ran into Michael Jordan and the Bulls, and they were used to winning, and Charles said it himself. They were nervous, Who wouldn't be coming against that juggernaut of the Bulls and that hysteria? But I think it's come out recently because, Charles likes to give Draymond Green a bit of stick, and the comparisons between those two players, which you can, whatever, let's not get into that. But people do forget how good Charles Barkley was. And he had that killer in him as well. I mean, I just think similar to Shaq, the irony is they go at each other so much on the TNT halftime show. It's just that if he had that Jordan or Kobe's mindset for conditioning and keeping your body right, what could Charles Barkley have done? And that's the fascinating thing, because he was always kind of, obviously his build was slightly different, but he was never quite in great, in amazing shape,
And it's crazy because he even said that after the 93 finals, he was like, look, there's no shame in losing to Michael Jordan, but that was the first time for Charles Barkley that he felt that there was someone that was better than him. So, coming in the same year, that mentality and that mindset that, you're right here, and it took MJ beating him in the finals to then be like, oh, okay, maybe this guy's actually better. So that kind of just shows you how Charles Barkley was operating back then. But it was it's also it's also just awesome just watching those highlights coupled with the 90s music. The score of this documentary is unreal.
But it's just a different time, and like I said, the music and the clothes were fantastic. That outfit,
we got to put some respect on Michael Jordan's name because, whilst his outfits of late may not quite be up to scratch, every fit in the 90s he crushed.
He was not to use the wrong term, he was a trailblazer. It's and he was. It's just what he did in that sports marketing and fashion landscape, just incredible. And every other guy, like Michael Jordan was the first one with the big oversized suits and all that sort of stuff and the longer shorts. That's MJ, And
before we get out of here, Dan, obviously episodes 5 and 6, we got a lot of content. 7 and 8 dropping next Monday on Netflix. Is there anything else for episodes 5 and 6 that caught your eye?
Oh, mate, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, the only other thing was, I think the Knicks and Bulls stuff I thought was quite interesting because the bad boy Pistons get a lot. We talk about them a lot. The Knicks were tough, and I think that loss to the Bulls in the Eastern Conference Championship Finals was it when they went up to was that 93? It was 93.
Yeah, in the Eastern Conference, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. But like that almost took the soul of the Knicks. I mean, it's just like it was fascinating to see. But just that series, I don't think that gets enough credit, And I want to go back and watch that again, just to, and what Patrick and obviously one of Michael Jordan's best mates, Patrick Ewing, and they were right there, but they just ran into the Bulls.
I love how much grief.
Go back and watch that one.
How much grief to this day MJ's giving Patrick Ewing, whether it's the dunk, whether it's the shot. Against Georgetown, Mike's had Pat's number for a while there, and he's not afraid to let him know about.
Again, well, and the Knicks haven't done anything since Patrick Ewing. So, it's kind of like how Shaq gives Charles so much stick about not winning a championship ever. It's like that. You can just imagine the conversations. I forget there's a quote, but I forget it. But it's literally when MJ speaks to Patrick, he literally says the same thing every time.
Yeah.
I love it.
He's got to be getting sick of that by now. But The Last Dance continues next Monday on Netflix in Australia. We've got episodes 7 and 8. I want this to be a 20-hour documentary because I can't get enough of this. You can follow all The Last Dance coverage over at NBA.com Australia and over at our social channels as well. Until next week, Dan Ewing, thanks very much for joining us, man, and enjoy the rest of the documentary and stay safe out there, man.
BK, my brother, love you, bro. And big shout out to everyone at home. Stay safe. Keep supporting hoops. I can't wait to get back on the floor, as I'm sure you guys can't either. Ciao.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys next time.